Oh, man. What a time, what a time, what a time. Man, we're going to talk a lot today. We're going to get a little deep today. Maybe, maybe not for some. For others, maybe so. Because we live in such a high sensitive society, I'm sure that some people will be taken aback or potentially offended. And I think a whisper is too loud if you don't want to hear what somebody has to say, right? So I get it. So these are just my thoughts. I'm not objective truth, but this is my perspective, obviously. But we're going to get into it. We're going to get deep today. We're going to get a little deep today. So put your thinking caps on and all of that, because we're going to talk today. But first things first, welcome to CNN, not NN. Kurt, we going in. I'm the underdog, your host, Kurt Kennedy. Let's go in. On this channel, we take no part in the unfruitful works of darkness, but instead expose them. All right? So we try to do that. All right. Man, there's a lot that we could talk about. We got another video coming. Are Trump and Kamala, are they trying to just give the election away to each other? They are both wilding right now. And the election's a short period of time away. They're scrambling, chickens with their heads cut off, all that good stuff. All right. But that's not that's not this video. In this video, I was intrigued by a YouTube video on my feed that was entitled, "Are We Too Obsessed with the End Times?" And a pastor got up and he asked Frank Turek from Cross-Examined with a D. You know, we're cross-examined with an E, me and Strack. He basically said that people in his church constantly asking him about Israel, the role. I don't think he's dispensationalist, the guy who asked the question. So if you're dispensational, you have a literal interpretation of the Old Testament, all the promises. So Israel is significant in the New Testament to them. Revelation is a 7-year period where Israel becomes dramatically converted. The church has been raptured up. I don't believe that personally, but that's what people believe who believe that, right? So, and Frank Turek answered the question, I thought, pretty well. It was a short video. And I've been thinking about this for some time, and some of these things I may have said already on the channel, but I've learned as I've watched a lot of YouTube videos, you got to say things 5 times for people to hear it once. So you say the same things. People make a lot of videos 6 weeks later, same content, same topic, hoping it, let's see if it did well. I don't know. I don't necessarily make videos that I think are going to do well. I just talk what I would feel like talking about, and if they do well, they do well. So I'm grateful for it when they do. If they don't, that's fine. But let's have this conversation. Are we too obsessed with Israel and the end times? And I would say, in America at least, 100%. Now, there's a couple reasons for that. Let me just say a couple quick reasons why, but then we're going to get into a much deeper topic that's connected to this, but somewhat different. We're going to go deep today, so stay with me. We're going to go deep, all right? And try to listen because I may challenge some theological assumptions that you've had. And you can disagree. This is just my perspective from studying the scripture, all right? But let me say a couple reasons why I think America in and of itself is too obsessed with Israel and the end times, right? One, I think one of the reasons why America, at least, American Christians in particular, are too obsessed with Israel and the end times. One is because we're just not persecuted enough. So we think persecution is someone disagreeing with us or wanting us to say that they're identified as a woman when they're really a man. That's persecution. We're not worried about bombs coming in and really killing us. We're worried about like getting our social media stuff, taken away, depending on what kind of, influencer and stuff you are. We're just not persecuted enough. So we're not like, 2 Timothy 3:12, indeed, all who desire to live a godly life will be persecuted, right? So we're just not persecuted enough. So we're basically looking for causes that we can get hype about to kind of show that we're serious. And so whenever something happens over there in Israel, it's like, oh, well, Jesus was Israeli. That's what the Bible says we got to do. And then we just immediately get obsessed with Israel in the end time. So part of it, one reason I think we're not persecuted enough. We're not worried about bombs destroying. We're not worried about our nation being destroyed. We haven't had that fear probably since 9/11. We just haven't. We haven't had that fear. All right. All right. Another reason why I think American Christians, why we're just kind of too obsessed with Israel and the end times, and this is probably a deeper one. So each one of these will get deeper. There's really only the next one we're going to jump in. They're really deep waters. But the second reason why is I think that it's a distraction from what we should care about, right? If we can get focused on Israel and the end times and look like we're really concerned with the things that God is concerned about. No. And we're, some people, what they say, they got their newspaper open and their Bible open. And it's like, well, Russia, look at this, Gog and Magog will come down. And this is Russia and China. And maybe true. I'm pretty sure that I know this for a fact that during the time of Hitler, that people thought he was the Antichrist, like the main dude. And he came and went, right? So depending on what's happening in Israel, you will react to it a particular way. But the second reason I think is if we can be so distracted by Israel, we can avoid the thing that we should care most about, which is how we're actually living. Like if you genuinely believe that the Lord's coming back soon, and what's happening in the Middle East and with Israel is the indication, and somewhere you can find it in Revelation or in Daniel or wherever you find that, right? Because Daniel's like sort of the Old Testament Revelation, and Revelation is Revelation, right? So let's say you think that this is what this is. I personally believe that Revelation and Daniel, they're picture books, not puzzle books. More Revelation than Daniel, because Daniel's clearly about other nations, and it describes that. And Revelation is as well, but it's not as clear what we're talking about here, right? But having said that, I think we can focus on that and look like we really care about what God cares about. But what God cares about is the character of his people, not how much we care about the Israelites. Like there's no passages. You may interpret some passages that we should support Israel and be there for Israel. And that's fine. I mean, Jesus was Israeli. That's what our Savior came from that. And that people group, that location does have a special place. No question. I mean, that's where Jesus walked, right? So, and they said when he returns, he's going to come back. All that's legitimate. But I think what happens is we're so obsessed with the end times in Israel. But you know what's interesting? I feel like, and again, I'm not the Lord, I don't see everyone. I feel like the people that are the most obsessed with the end times in Israel, they're all raging against people who are not that way. I know people who come on Facebook. I don't know how they find these posts. But let's just say you post something about Israel, man, they're right there, boom. And they're pushing back and calling you all these names if you don't have this abject worship and fear for the nation of Israel. And it's like, fam, if you really believe that Israel is the nation and that God's coming back soon, then then you should be worried about standing before God and giving an account, right? I mean, isn't that I don't know how you grew up, right? But let's just say, so my mom, when I grew up, right, I had a single mom, me, my mom, and my older brother. And my mom hated when we had company in the house. We lived in an apartment in this, it wasn't the ghetto, but it was tough neighborhood, right? So my mom hated when we had company, right? But we knew my mom worked. And we lived in this high rise. We were on the 3rd floor. And we lived in a high rise. And we knew around the time my mom would normally come home. So for some reason, we were dumb enough to try to have company up until the last minute. We'd be playing hide and go seek in our house, in our apartment. It was a small apartment. But when you're a kid, it's all you have. It was fun. We're playing hide and go seek. We're doing all this crazy stuff, right? And then around the time when we knew my mom would come home, we'd either have people leave so we could vacuum and clean up, or sometimes we got so caught up. I remember one time my mom, I could look from my balcony and see where you come into our apartment complex and go around the back. And that just happened one time. We had a bunch of people over and we were playing it, and I saw my mother's car drive. And I said, "Hey, my mother's here. Y'all gotta go. And so everybody got out and we tried to vacuum real quick, right? We tried to hurry up and vacuum because we knew that my mother was coming home. Well, if you really believe that Jesus is coming back soon, then you got to give an account to him. We got them people out of our house because we knew we're going to get in trouble for disobeying him. So we want to clean up because we know she's going to walk in the door any minute. We want to vacuum and do all this and then sit on our beds all prim and proper like we just finished our homework, right? It was like these people who are so obsessed that are aggressive and they think Jesus is coming back, and they're attacking people for not being as concerned or prioritizing the safety of Israel. And to me, if that's the case for you, then why wouldn't you have the character that Jesus requires, right? It's fascinating to me because that's where I'm trying to grow. Like there's a lot of things that we can be passionate about and care about, and I do, but I'm trying to be passionate about the things that what I give an account for when I stand before God, right? So I think we get too obsessed because one, we're not persecuted enough, and two, it distracts us from needing to care about what we really should care about is how are we doing? How are we doing obeying God? You're worried about Israel, but you're addicted to pornography, right? You're worried about Israel, but you're bitter at people and won't forgive them. You're worried about, that type of thing, right? But let me explain to you personally why I don't obsess over Israel or the end times. So I just want to share with you. You feel free to disagree if you want to. That's fine. This may be helpful. I don't obsess over it, and partly I could say why I'd never be a dispensationalist on one level, and because there's a lot of reasons, but just the prioritization of Israel would be one of the reasons why. And let me tell you why I personally, I want to give you biblical reasons. So we're about to get deep. So just know that we're about to get deep. All right, we're going to go deep. So stay with me. Feel free to disagree if you want to, but we're going to go deep. But I want to explain to you why I don't obsess over Israel and see them the way that a lot of people obsess over them. Now, let me say this. I have great respect for the people group that the Messiah came from. I respect them. I do not think the European Jews that are in Jerusalem now and all that's how everything looked and that Jesus was white. I don't think that. I don't think Jesus was black with an afro and looked like Ned the Wino from Good Times. No, I just think he looked like Osama bin Laden. He looked, like an Israeli. He looked like one of them. But I respect greatly the people group the Messiah comes from. I do. But I'm not like, oh my gosh, they're everything and only thing. And one of the reasons why I think there's been an elevation of Israel in American Christianity in a way that I think has been harmful for the reasons I listed so far, but also for these next things. And I think part of it is this idea of, like, even today, the fighting over the black Hebrew Israelites, saying that they're the true, and then you have saying that these are the ethnic Jews are, and there's all this fighting over who's the people group and whose ethnicity and who's really belonging to Abraham and all this stuff. And so one of the first reason why I don't obsess over Israel is that Israel is not an ethnicity, believe it or not. It's not an ethnicity. And let me tell you something about Israel that people, I think, often forget. This is biblical. I'm about to show you this. Israel's not an ethnicity. It's not a people group that are, yes, they're children of Abraham on some level. But as we know and as Scripture has developed, the people who believe like Abraham believed are sons and daughters of Abraham, not just who are connected to him ethnically. We know from stuff like Romans 2 that the circumcision that was given in the Mosaic and the Abrahamic covenant was supposed to circumcise the heart, right? And that you can be circumcised in the heart and be a Gentile, and those who were circumcised in the flesh won't be true Israel, right? So people get offended, especially if you're in that dispensational camp. Like, what are you talking about? Even in the Romans 11 stuff, we'll get to this in a second. But Israel's not an ethnicity. It's not an ethnicity. Let me prove this to you. Let's look at this real quick. In Genesis chapter 48, right? This is Jacob. So Israel is supposed to be his 12 sons, all right? 12 people that come from Jacob, and they have families and become the people group of Israel. That's who the Israelites become, people who descended from Jacob, and Jacob is obviously the grandson of Abraham, right? So here's what it says, though. It says, after this, Joseph was told, behold, your father is ill. So he took with him his two sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. And it was told to Jacob, your son Joseph has come to you. Then Israel summoned his strength and sat up in bed. And Jacob said to Joseph, God Almighty appeared to me at Luz in the land of Canaan and blessed me and said to me, behold, I will make you fruitful and multiply you, and I will make of you a company of peoples and will give this land to your offspring after you for an everlasting possession. And now your two sons who were born to you in the land of Egypt before I came to you in Egypt are mine. Ephraim and Manasseh shall be mine, as Reuben and Simeon are mine. And the children that you fathered after them shall be yours. They shall be called by the name of their brothers and their inheritance. Right? So here's what's happening. So So Jacob, Joseph's dad, is telling him that God told him that two of his sons, Manasseh and Ephraim, are to belong to him, to be considered his sons, and then the rest of Joseph's sons are Joseph's sons, right? So Jacob says, I'm going to take two of your sons, and those two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, become tribes of Israel, okay? We know that. Now, keep in mind, Joseph doesn't have a tribe, and the tribes are usually the people that are given the land by God, right? The tribes are given the land, they're given land, right? So he takes Manasseh and Ephraim and makes them, each of them, a tribe, right? These are Joseph's sons, okay? Now let's look at the origin of Joseph's sons, right? Here's the reality of Joseph's sons. They are descendants of Abraham, for sure, because their dad is Abraham's, is their direct family. But here's what we know from Genesis 41, 50 to 52. It says, 2 sons were born to Joseph before the years of famine arrived. Anaseth, daughter of Potiphar, priest of On, bore them to him. Joseph named the firstborn Manasseh and said, God has made me forget all my hardship and my whole family, right? And then he says in verse 52, and the second son he named Ephraim and said, God has made me fruitful in my land, in the land of my affliction. Now, many of us know the story of Joseph. He was sold by his brothers into Egypt, and then he was up there and became the second in command of Pharaoh, right? And he ends up marrying Egyptian women and having children with them. Now, keep this in mind, we just read from Genesis 48 that God told Jacob to take Ephraim and Manasseh, Joseph's 2 sons that we just read about from Genesis 41, and make them his sons that are going to participate in being part of the tribe of Israel, one of the Israelites, right? One of the people of the promise, right? We know that. That's established as true. Well, we just also read that both Manasseh and Ephraim are half Egyptian. So they're not fully ethnic in terms of descendants of Abraham. Abraham married Sarah, who was his sister, half sister. But Ephraim and Manasseh are half Egyptian, right? They're half Egyptian. So from the beginning, the tribes of Israel start off with 2 of them already have what we would consider Gentile blood mixed in them, if we're thinking of Israel as an ethnicity, right? So from the get-go, you got Manasseh and Ephraim, half Egyptian, and they're going to give birth, they're going to have family, and they're going to be 2 of the tribes of Israel. So from the beginning, the 2 tribes of the 12 were not full-blood descendants of Abraham. They would be considered half Gentile, especially after the tribes are established. But let's keep going, because that's not enough, all right? Here's the second reason why I don't obsess over Israel. So the first is, Israel's not an ethnicity the way people talk about it today. And some people say, well, I don't think they're an ethnicity. That's fine. That's fine. I'm not saying everyone thinks that way. I'm just saying, I'm trying to prove a point that from the beginning, that Israel, the 12 tribes of Israel, started with 2 of them half Egyptian. Manasseh and Ephraim are Joseph's sons, who he had from this woman, Asenath, right? Asenath, daughter of Potiphar, priest of On, bore them to him. And he named them Manasseh and Ephraim, right? They're not Egyptian. Here's the second reason why. When the Mosaic covenant was established with Israel, it was established with all the people that left Egypt, right? So we know the plagues of Egypt. We get that, right? We know that in the plagues that God said that he was going to kill the firstborn. So you had the darkness, right, in plague 9, and then in plague 10 was the death of the firstborn. And God told them, after that happens, they're going to let you go. He's telling Moses, after that happens, Egypt's going to let you go. Take whatever you need, take jewelry, go, all that stuff. You're going to plunder them. They can't wait for you to leave after I kill the firstborn son. That's exactly what happened. But let's read what happens there. Because what my point is, the Mosaic covenant that God made at Mount Sinai with the people of Israel, he made with all the people that left Egypt, right? Let's go to the tape. Let's see what it says about these people. All right. Here we go. Oops, wrong one. I'm going to make sure y'all see this, all right? Hopefully you can see it. Here we go. So he says this. So the Exodus, starting in verse 33 of Exodus chapter 12. The Egyptians were urgent with the people to send them out into the land in haste, for they said, we shall all be dead. So the people took their dough before it was leavened, their kneading bowls being bound up with their cloaks on their shoulders. The people of Israel had also done as Moses told them, for they had asked the Egyptians for silver and gold and jewelry and for clothing. And the Lord had given the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians, so that they let them have what they asked. Thus they plundered the Egyptians. And the people of Israel journeyed from Ramses to Succoth, about 600,000 men on foot, besides women and children. Listen to verse 38. A mixed multitude also went up with them, and very much livestock, both flocks and herds. And they baked unleavened cakes of the dough that they had brought out of Egypt, for it was not leavened, because they were thrust out of Egypt and could not wait, nor had they prepared any provisions for themselves, right? So it says here, it defines Israel as those who were enslaved, which is true, right? But it says here in verse 38, a mixed multitude also went up with them, and very much livestock, right? So we know that Moses married a Ethiopian, I think, right? And so a mixed multitude leaves with Egypt. Leaves Egypt to go be with Israel. They leave too. They're leaving. So it's the Israelites who were the slaves, and the mixed multitude leaves, right? And then you get to chapter 14, and they're on the way, and then they kill them in the Red Sea. They're terrified. Chapter 15, after the Red Sea closes, you get the song of Miriam, how they worship. And at the very end of chapter 15, you get Israel complaining because they're thirsty. So God tells Moses to throw a tree in the water and make the bitter water sweet, and they call it Mara because the water was bitter, right? And then in chapter 16, they're complaining about eating, and they talking about, let's go back to Egypt because we had meat pots and bread over there. Right? All this stuff, right? They're complaining. And then you get to Exodus chapter 19, right? This is when you get to Exodus 19. And then you see what we know as the beginning. We know we're all supremely aware of Exodus 20, right? Which is the 10 commandments. But if we start at Exodus 19, right? This is what we see. All right? Here's what we see at Exodus 19. We see the covenant. It starts here. On the third new moon, after the people of Israel had gone out of the land of Egypt, on that day they came into the wilderness of Sinai. They set out from Rephidim and came into the wilderness of Sinai, and they encamped in the wilderness. There Israel encamped before the mountain, while Moses went up to God. The Lord called to him out of the mountain, saying, Thus you shall say to the house of Jacob, and tell the people of Israel, you yourselves have seen what I did to the Egyptians, and how I bore you on the eagle's wings and brought you to myself. Now, therefore, if you will indeed obey my voice and keep my covenant, you shall be my treasured possession among all peoples, for all the earth is mine, and you shall be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words that you shall speak to the people of Israel. So Moses came and called the elders of the people and set before them all these words that the Lord commanded him. All the people answered together, all that the Lord has spoken we will do. And Moses reported the words of the people to the Lord. And the Lord said to Moses, Behold, I'm coming to you in a thick cloud that the people, when they hear me. Right. So you get this, you see this happening, and then God shows up on a cloud, and it's like thunder, and people, the Israelites, are terrified. And they're like, no, Moses, you go up. We don't want to go up. Right. And then God gives them the 10 commandments. Right. So God makes a covenant, and the people that he's calling Israel are all the people that left, including the mixed multitude. Right. So those people weren't like, all right, thanks for traveling. You guys go hang with the Canaanites. Or unless I missed it, I could be wrong. Someone might be like, oh, maybe I missed it, but I don't remember seeing a time where the mixed multitude left and was separated from Israel, the people. So when God makes a covenant with Israel, the people that he's calling Israel, this mixed multitude who are not Israelites, who are not descendants of Abraham, they're Gentiles, they're a part of that covenant at Sinai. They're a part of it. Now keep in mind that 2 of the 12 tribes are already half Egyptian in terms of Manasseh and Ephraim. They already have that Gentile mix. They already have mixed blood in them, right? This is what's happening. Then when you get the covenant in Mount Sinai, God's calling these people Israel, and he's making a covenant with these people. Right? And Ephraim and Manasseh are already mixed. And now you have this covenant of people. Moses' wife is mixed. His kids, if Moses, they're mixed, right? Remember his sister Miriam, and they were making fun of him, and they had leprosy, and then they prayed and they were mixed, and God accepted them, right? It wasn't like, hey, I'm not making a covenant with your wife and your father-in-law because they're not descendants of. It was the people who left became the Israel that God is addressing. And they weren't all ethnically connected to Abraham. Now hear what I'm not saying. I'm not making a case for black Hebrew Israelites. That's not what I'm saying. I do not believe anything they say. I think those people need help. I think they need Jesus for real, the real Jesus, not the Jesus. That's not the case I'm making. The point I'm making, I'm putting my thumb up because my video gets blurry sometimes. The point that I'm making is that from the beginning, Israel has always been mixed in terms of its ethnic connection, right? It's always been mixed from its ethnic connection. From Ephraim and Manasseh, right, to the mixed multitude that God establishes the Mosaic covenant with, right? It's always been mixed. Here's another reason why I don't obsess over Israel and why maybe I'm not a dispensational. Why I don't obsess over them. Here's a third reason. Because the name Ephraim, which was the mixed multitude, remember he's half Egyptian. The name Ephraim was used by God as a pseudonym for Israel, the northern kingdom, the 12 tribes. God would call Israel, the 10 tribes in the northern kingdom. Many of you know this, but in case you didn't, because of Solomon's sin in 1 Kings 11, God split the kingdom, right? He split it. 10 tribes in the northern kingdom, and then 2 tribes in the southern kingdom, right? Judah and Benjamin. And the other tribes were in the northern kingdom, right? And in 722 BC, the northern kingdom was attacked by the Assyrians for their disobedience to God. Perpetual disobedience, God punished them. And then later in 605 BC, but most notably around 586 BC, Nebuchadnezzar and them came and took Judah, the southern kingdom. And that's what the book of Daniel is about, right? The book of Daniel is about that. But the name Ephraim is used as a pseudonym for the 10 tribes. Now keep in mind, Ephraim is already half Egyptian, right? There's a mixed multitude of people, right, that God makes a covenant with. But then he calls Ephraim a pseudonym that's synonymous with calling them Israel, the 10 tribes. The one of the 2 tribes that starts off with being half Egyptian, right? Listen to this, Isaiah 7:17. The Lord will bring on you, and please, I'm going somewhere, so if you're confused right now, stay with me. I'm going somewhere. The Lord will bring on you, your people, and your father's house, such a time as has never been seen since Ephraim separated from Judah. Look at that, Ephraim. Ephraim is only one tribe. What do you mean Ephraim separated from Judah? That's not no, Ephraim, Israel separated from Judah, right? So God is calling Ephraim Israel. He's calling him, saying, you're the 10 tribes, but I'm identifying Ephraim. Out of all the tribes that God could have used, he called them Ephraim. Ephraim, the tribe that was started with half Egyptian, half the head of that tribe. Ephraim, the son, the grandson of great-great-grandson of Abraham, who is Jacob's grandson, who becomes one of the 12 tribes, starts off. So God chooses that name, him, that tribe, to be considered equivalent to Israel. So he says, the Lord will bring on you your people and your father's house such a time as has never been since Ephraim separated from Judah. He will bring the king of Assyria. So there it is. So the king of Assyria comes to, and they attack Israel, and God makes that synonymous with the name Ephraim, the tribe. Well, I'll explain in a second why this is really important. Then you got Hosea 6:4, another one. What am I going to do with you, Ephraim? What am I going to do with you, Judah? Right? So again, associating Ephraim, one of the 10 tribes in the north, as all of them, right? And that tribe begins half Gentile, half Egyptian, right? From the get-go. So what am I going to do? Your love is like the morning mist and like the early dew that vanishes, right? So here God is saying that Ephraim, I'm choosing Ephraim out of the other 9 tribes I could call synonymous with Israel. I'm choosing Ephraim, the tribe that starts off half Egyptian, technically half Gentile, right? Let me tell you why this is important. Because Ephraim, Israel, was destroyed. Like Israel, the 10 tribes got lost. This is why people like the black Hebrew Israelites and them claim that they're the true Israelites, right? Because those 10 tribes got lost. No one knows what happened to them. No one knows what happened to the 10 tribes. I mean, you might find some archaeologist that says, oh, the 10, but no one knows what happened to the 10 tribes. They got demolished. Ephraim got demolished by the Gentiles, by the Assyrians. And and their sin was so great that they just got molded into the Gentiles. They were no longer a dynamic. The reason why the name Jews is not a name that they always had. In the Old Testament, they were the Israelites, right? Or the house of Jacob or whatever it was. The reason why the name Jews actually Jewish exists, was because the southern kingdom, Judah, Benjamin and Judah, that were taken captive by Nebuchadnezzar, well, they were eventually freed, right? They were freed after Cyrus, king of Persia, and then Artaxerxes and them. They freed the Jews and allowed the Jews, God used them to allow the Jews to go back and build the wall and the temple. And that's what the book of Ezra and Nehemiah are about. And they were nicknamed the Jews because they knew that they came from Judah. So anyone that believed in the God that these people believed in were considered Jewish. It was a derivative. It was a nickname because only the people from the tribe of Judah were the ones who remembered where they came from and who were preserved, right? I think that was intentional because Jesus is the Lion of the tribe of Judah. God preserved the Judah, that tribe, because Jesus would come from the tribe of Judah. This is why in Philippians 3, Paul makes it clear, like, look, I'm a Hebrew of Hebrews from the tribe of Benjamin. Like Paul's saying, many of you don't know your identity. I know who I am. I'm from the tribe of Benjamin, circumcised on the 8th day, a Hebrew of Hebrews. He's basically saying, many of you don't even know your heritage. You know that you're Jewish, you're a Jew, but you claim a Jew. I'm a Hebrew. I know my heritage. My heritage is traced. It's proven. But he said, I reject all of that to know Christ. This is Philippians 3. This is why he's giving that kind of language, because he's saying the 10 tribes, Ephraim, they got assimilated into the Gentiles. The Assyrians just destroyed them. They just never came back. No one knows what happened to them. They were killed, imprisoned, probably married in, and just became Gentiles. Only the tribe of Judah and Benjamin, they remained. They remained legitimate tribes. They were taken, but they were also allowed to come back. And that's what Ezra and Nehemiah are about. Ezra's about them rebuilding the temple, and Nehemiah is about God letting them rebuild the wall. And that's how it's happening, right? So you got this thing where the name Ephraim is used, and Ephraim, who starts off as half Egyptian, who's a Gentile, right? Half Gentile, half connected to Abraham, ethnicity wise. That's the name that God chooses to say, you represent the nations that were taken captive and lost by the Gentiles. The Gentiles became that, right? Now think about this. And this is probably going to make some people mad, and I'm okay with that, right? Let's just say I'm right in what I'm saying. Let's just say that I'm actually right in what I'm laying out. And let's just say I'm right. And believe me, I studied this. There's a lot more I could say, but this is a YouTube video, and I'm not trying to go too hard, right? Let's just say I'm right in what I'm saying, right? This is, and I believe that I am in many ways. I mean, we're always wrong at some things, right? But one of the reasons why I believe that this is important, because a lot of the arguments, especially from the dispensational side, are people who like really hold to Israel being this distinct group that's separate, like the Gentiles are a separate thing than Israel. I think there's two problems. One, from the beginning, Gentile has always been a part of Israel from Manasseh and Ephraim. But then you get a mixed multitude that God makes the covenant with in Moses. The Mosaic covenant includes non-ethnic people that he's identifying as the people of Israel. Again, unless I'm missing something where they were all let go somewhere else and it was only those people, I don't see that. the women that Moses married and all the people that left with Moses, the Ethiopians and the other people that left and whoever else with the mixed multitude, they went to and they stood at Mount Sinai and agreed to follow God in the same way. We know that in the Old Testament, God said, look, if you take foreigners captive, you got to circumcise them bad boys and they can be engrafted into part of the people of, and they got to follow the same thing, right? So that was already happening. So we get from the beginning, there was no such thing as ethnicity in and of itself. There was also the people who belonged to Abraham who made a profession of faith. These are the people that I'm going to put my confidence and my trust in. These are the people that the Messiah is going to come from. We're not even going to get into the fact that within the line of Jesus, you have like Rahab and Ruth, a Moabitess, and I forgot where Rahab. Why am I forgetting where Rahab is from right now? But they're Gentiles. They're in the line of Jesus, right? When you look at his genealogy, they're there, right? So you have this idea that, whoa, wait a minute, that Israel is called Ephraim, who is half Gentile. And Ephraim gets sucked in to all of the Gentiles. But they're still Israel, even though they're Ephraim, right? Say with me. So when you get to a place like this, when you get to Romans 11, here's a big deal that most people say, oh, this is it. So this is the thing, right? This is a dispensationalist, this is heavy doctrine here, right? This is where we get to this. And they talk about this. Look. Now, true, Paul is describing to the Gentiles that they were engrafted in to this reality, right? To this reality. And then he makes this point. He says, lest you be wise in your own sight. I do not want you to be unaware of this mysteries, brothers. A partial hardening has come upon Israel until the fullness of the Gentiles has come in. And in this way, all Israel will be saved. As it is written, the deliverer will come from Zion. He will banish ungodliness from Jacob. And this will be my covenant with them when I take away their sins. So a lot of people will teach that this is saying that once the Gentiles come, then all Israel will be saved. I do not think that's what's happening here in light of the logic that I presented. When it says a partial hardening has come upon Israel until the fullness of the Gentiles has come in, it says, and in this way, all Israel will be saved. This is what I really believe that God is trying to say. That the Gentiles, the people that we consider Gentiles to God have always been a part of Israel. They've always been a part of Israel, right? Israel was never an ethnicity. It was a people who will believe that God will save, that are connected to Abraham because of his faith. But it was never just an ethnic group. I think what Romans 11 is trying to say, that all Israel will be saved, is that when the Gentiles are now saved, then all Israel, all the people that are Israel, which started as Gentile with Ephraim and Manasseh, which as part of the Mosaic covenant, where the mixed multitude, God made that covenant with, which he uses the name Ephraim is a pseudonym for Israel, who is demolished by the Gentiles. And then he says, all right, I'm going to bring those people back. So those Gentiles that got swallowed up, that heard about the God of the Jews, those Samaritans, all those people that are not fully ethnic blood, that the Israelites hated because they weren't full-blooded. They were missing the point. Those people to God have always been a part of Israel, because Israel was never an ethnicity, and the covenant that God made with Abraham extended to his 2 Egyptian grandsons, and then extended to a mixed multitude of people that were always going to be Gentile, that God called them Israel. So when he gets to Israel, all Israel will be saved, I don't think he's saying the ethnicity of Israel that we often think of. He's saying when the Gentiles are saved, that's all Israel then will be saved. And let me tell you why I believe that about it. Here's my 4th reason why I don't obsess over Israel. Here's the 3rd reason why I'm saying this. All right. Here's what Paul says. Listen to this language from Paul in Ephesians chapter 3. Right? Listen to what he says here. I can't believe he says this. Listen to this. Ephesians chapter 3. Let's do this so it can be close on the screen. All right. He says this. For this reason, listen to this. I, Paul, now keep in mind, this is the heading, even though the heading is not inspired. But they want you to, the mystery of the gospel revealed. Think about that statement. The mystery of the gospel, right? The mystery of the gospel is revealed. Listen to what Paul says in Ephesians 3. For this reason, I, Paul, a prisoner of Christ Jesus, on behalf of you Gentiles, assuming that you have heard of the stewardship of God's grace that was given to me for you, how the mystery was made known to me by revelation, as I have written briefly. When you read this, you can perceive my insight into the mystery of Christ, which was not made known to the sons of men in other generations, as it has now been revealed to his holy apostles and prophets by the Spirit. The mystery is, think about it. What's the mystery? That Jesus Christ is fully God and fully man? That Jesus, listen to what the mystery is. The mystery is that the Gentiles are fellow heirs, members of the same body, and partakers of the promise of Christ Jesus through the gospel. Think about what he's saying right here. He's saying the mystery that has been hidden from every other generation until now is that the Gentiles are fellow heirs. The people that we've always thought are not the people of God, the Gentiles, are the Gentiles. They're members of the same body and partakers of the promise of Christ. He didn't say the mystery is this, that Christ is this, Christ is fully God, he's this. He says the mystery that has been hidden from all other people until right now, as Paul's writing, is that the Gentiles are now a part of it. Why is that a big mystery? Why has that been hidden? Because from the beginning of the 12 tribes, God chose Ephraim and Manasseh. Listen, God is intentional. Every detail matters some more than others. God does not do things that are just coincidence, right? He's very specific. God doesn't know how to do things by coincidence. Everything he does has a purpose, and it doesn't always get revealed until later. This is why we believe in the conceptual framework of progressive revelation. We didn't know in the Bible when it said, he told Satan in Genesis 3:15, this woman will give birth to a seed. He would bruise your head and you would bruise his heel. The rest of the Bible was like, well, who is the seed? That's what everybody's waiting for. It's progressive revelation until it gets to Jesus, right? So God from the beginning chose Abraham out of the Ur of the Chaldeans, right? Says, I'm going to start with you. You have faith, right? You believe and it's credited to you as righteousness. And all who believe like you will be your heirs, your offspring. All who believe like you. And your offspring, singular, which we know from Galatians 3, Paul said, the offspring that would be a blessing to many nations would be Jesus, would be the one, right? And then we know from Romans 2 that circumcision of the heart is what makes a person a Jew. A Jew is not a Jew outwardly, but inwardly also. So you have, from the beginning, God established the nation of Israel with half Egyptians as two of the tribal leaders. And then he established a mixed multitude that he made a covenant with. And then he attributes the name that's associated with Israel, the 10 tribes that get lost, the lost tribes of Israel get lost into the Gentile world, were started as half Gentile. And then when he says, I'm going to bring all these people back, all Israel will be saved in Romans 11, the Gentiles have always been included in the nation of Israel. So it's not that Gentiles will be saved and then all the ethnicity of Israel be saved. So we need to be watching and waiting for all the ethnicity to be saved. I don't think that's what he means. I think in Ephesians 3, what we just read, Paul is saying, look, this is the mystery of the ages, that the Gentiles are included. All this time, we didn't know that they were included in this, and they have been from the beginning. It was God's plan. And now he told us, and now we're telling you, rejoice. Rejoice. So for me, full circle, I have great respect for the ethnicity of Israel. And I do observe what's happening in the Middle East. I love Jesus and I'm grateful. I don't care what ethnicity he came from, but he chose to be an Israelite. He came from those people. That was he created that people group from the promise that from Abraham. But I don't think it's ever really been about an ethnicity. And I don't think it's about just, we got to care about the ethnicity of Israel. There are some Jews that are just not going to make it. There are Jews who have not made it over time, who have rejected. They are in hell. They have rejected Jesus. They have rejected him. And I think what we call Israel, we separate Israel and the Gentiles. And I think, there's a place for that because the Bible does that. But when you get to Ephesians 3, Paul's making the point that they were a part of the plan of salvation from the get-go. And I just walked us through why I think that's right. And so I think Romans 11, when it says, and then when the Gentiles are fully there, and all Israel will be saved, I don't think it means the ethnicity. I think the Gentiles have always been a part of Israel from God's perspective, because the Israel to God was never just an ethnicity. It was people who are connected to him that will believe. And this is why Gentiles can believe. This is why they're God-fearers. This is why, Greeks that feared God were considered Jesus would heal these people. Jesus sent Peter to go talk to Cornelius and preach to him. And that was how Peter knew 11 years later in Acts 15 that they don't got to be circumcised. Because I just was in Cornelius' house and its Holy Spirit fell on them like us. Right? So I just think the obsession with Israel as an ethnicity and all this stuff, I personally am not buying it. I don't think they can do no wrong. And when they do wrong, the Palestinian people are people Christ died for. He died for those people too. And I think Israel, I think they do a lot of evil things. And I don't think they get a pass because Jesus is Israeli. They just don't. And so I don't obsess over them. I don't obsess with the end times. I think the Revelation is a picture book. It's not a puzzle book. I don't think, in all honesty, none of us really know, to be honest. And I just wish more theologians I just wish there were more mysteriologians, right? I wish there were more people who just said, you know what? We honestly don't know. We have no idea how this is going to play out. I don't see postmillennialism at all. I don't know where people get that from. I don't see it in the scriptures. I think we're all eisegetical when it comes to what Revelation means. We all want it to mean what we think it means. I do not think it means I just don't think God wanted us to know. What he wanted us to know is that those who believe that Jesus will win. But those who will win in the end, but those who believe in Jesus will experience severe suffering in the end times. And I just think, and this is why I've never really agreed with the rapture. Like, well, God's not going to let the church suffer. So there were no godly people at all in the 10 tribes when the Assyrians came? Isn't the book of Daniel evidence that there were godly people? There were prophets that were also taken into custody. Daniel, Mishael, Azariah, and Azael, whatever, that was their real names. They were taken, and they were godly people, right? So they suffered under that. Obviously they got some good treatment, but they were getting ready to be thrown in the lions den. It wasn't like Nebuchadnezzar was like super tight with them. He was ready to throw Daniel in the lions den, right? After he had done. So I just think that the obsession with Israel, I think we just have to be careful. Yes, Jesus was Israeli, but I don't see where we're supposed to just like throw out everything else he said and just support anybody. If anything, we're supposed to have a unique love for those who are in the church. Galatians 6:10, therefore, as we have every opportunity, do good to everyone, especially those in the household of faith. They're not in the household of faith yet. They're not believers. They don't believe. So so my heart goes out to all people because they need Jesus. But the unique love and concern that I have is for the church. I do not, and some people say, oh, that's just replacement theology. No, I don't think the church replaces Israel at all. But that's an ethnic statement. I think Gentiles has always been a part of Israel from the beginning. I just don't think I think the distinction was this people group that suffered from, the people that God made a covenant with at Sinai became Israel. And those people disobeyed God, whether they were ethnically connected to Abraham or not. And so but I don't think the church replaces Israel at all. I think the plan was that who God would call Israel would be people who belong to him, and the church would be a part of that. And the Gentiles were not, they were grafted in, but they were grafted in the sense that they have been an ethnic group that Israel had an issue with. But from the beginning, from Ephraim being half Egyptian to the Mosaic covenant, to Ephraim being the pseudonym for the 12 tribes of Israel that were obliterated, lost in the Gentile world, and then brought back, it makes sense that God would bring Gentiles to salvation because some of them were connected to the Israelites that were in the 10 tribes, because that is the people that they learned. That's where the Samaritans, that's where they learned about the God of the Israelites. And so for God to save Gentiles made sense because that's who the Israelites got lost in the 10 tribes. But what do I know? What do I know? I don't know what I'm talking about. I just like making these videos from time to time and hoping that they encourage and help you all think through some of this crazy stuff. But what do I really know? I could be wrong in everything I said, but I'm not saying things to try to be intentionally wrong. I try to walk you through the scriptures. So I don't obsess. I don't think you should obsess over Israel. If you are mostly concerned about what's happening there and about the imminent return of our Lord, I think the best thing we can do is focus on the character that God requires of us. How are we living? Because you're not going to give account. You're not going to give an account for how you felt about bombings in Israel, but you will give an account for how you bomb somebody out for them cutting you off or whatever it is. We will give an account for the character that we demonstrated, not the positions, not the policies that we hold, not how much we cared about what happened to Israel and marched and fought for Israel rights, their right to have their own. That stuff is just not going to be what matters at the end. So I think, listen, it's a crazy time right now for sure, but don't get it twisted. What's happening in Israel right now is nothing compared to what happened in World War II. Let's please stop insulting my intelligence. What happened in World War II was insane. What the Jews went through those 6 years was insane. And I think that was much worse back then than what's happening right now with Iran and Hezbollah. I mean, that's nothing. The Jews are punishing them dudes. Israel's punishing them nations. Man, what happened back then was way worse. So I think we should just calm down. Let's watch what's happening, obviously. We pay attention. It's an important part of the world for us. But let's just stay focused on what we got to stay focused on. There's a lot more I could have said, but this is just a quick YouTube video. So I wasn't trying to get into all. I could have said a lot more to make my case, but I just want to give you enough so that y'all can process it. You can agree or disagree. I'm cool with either one. I'm fine with it. But like and subscribe to the channel. We keep it moving. You know, it depends. I think I might be back, man. I think it's something else I need to talk about. And yes, I saw the game. I was at the game with Jaden Daniels. I was there. But I'm not talking about that because y'all don't want that smoke just yet. I'm still enjoying how the commanders are just commanding themselves on the field. But I was there. But we'll wrap soon. I think I'm going to be back around 9 o'clock, 9:30 for something else. So grace and peace. Appreciate y'all. We'll see you when we see you.